This episode is sponsored by Linode. Linode is offering listeners of this podcast a $20 credit, which is good for 4 free months at their lowest plan. Their plans start at 1 gigabyte of RAM for $5 a month. You can get your servers in any of their 10 data centers, and their high memory plans start at 16 gigabytes. Get a server running in under a minute. They do hourly billing with a monthly cap on all plans and add-on services like backups, node balancers, Longview, etc. VMs for full control, running Docker containers, encrypted disks, VPNs, etc. You can run a private Git server. They provide native SSD storage, 200 gigabit network, and Intel E5 processors. They have 24/7 friendly support, even on holidays, and a 7-day money-back guaranteed. So go check them out at linode.com/adventures in Angular. Hey everybody, and welcome to another Adventures in Angular. This week on our panel we have Shai Reznik.
Hello, coming to you live with my grandma, coding together.
There you go. Pair programming. Ward Bell.
Hello, everybody.
Joe Eames.
Hey, everybody.
Alyssa Nicoll.
Hey, guys.
I'm Charles Max Wood from devchat.tv, and this week we have a special guest, Minko Gechev. Minko, you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone.
Now, we've had you on the show before, but do you want to just give people a quick update where you're at, why we love you, all that stuff, or why she loves you?
Sure. I love Minko.
I think you love a lot of people.
Yeah, you especially.
That's a good thing. Okay.
No,
You're calling him indiscriminate, right? That's
yeah, sure. Currently, I'm working on a startup called Rime. It's rime.com. And in my spare time, I'm doing a lot of open source. So I've been quite active in the Angular community recently.
Hey, you're going to have to spell that for us.
Rime. Yeah, it's like a rhyme.
R-H-Y-M-E?
Yeah.
It could have been R-I-M-E.
Yeah, it could have been R-I-M-E. I mean, it's the day of the internet, so you could have spelled it any way you felt like. You could have spelled it ZXRQ and called it rhyme.
Yeah, we have the right spelling domain.
Yeah, but rhyme is a real word, R-I-M-E.
Yeah, it's a real word. It's still actually in private beta, so
you cannot talk about it.
Yeah, we're going to test this actually on NG Atlanta next week.
So welcome everybody to the Adventures in Dictionary and Spelling Bee.
I did not know.
I just want to say rhyme rhymes with rhyme.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, we brought you on this week to talk about differs, and you wrote a blog post back in November about differs, iterable differs, key value differs, custom differs. Why do we care about differs?
So differs are an interest. So in Angular, we have this very good separation of concerns where each individual module, Angular comes with great design by default, and so each individual module has very strong responsibility and does only what it's supposed to. So we have such great separation of concerns for the internal modules inside of the framework itself. We have different directives like ng-for and ng-if, and we even have ng-class and ng-style. And on top of that, since the directive ng-for, for instance, it is responsible for listing a collection of items, like rendering them on the screen, there is also some business logic involved there. Once the ng-for directive accepts a collection of items, after that, it needs to reflect once this collection changes. And this logic for finding out what the difference between the current version of the collection is and the previous version of the collection is encapsulated in a different abstraction called a differ. So yeah, we care about the differs because they encapsulate very heavy computation happening actually inside of our application. Finding out the difference between two versions of the same data structure is something which happens quite often in our application, and the Angular team did a great job to implement a very efficient algorithm for finding out the difference in their default differ implementation.
So, right, but their default one is generic, and so it can't be efficient for every possible object because if you if you had some real quick and dirty way or quick and real way of differentiating two objects, knowing when two objects of a particular kind changed, you could do it a lot faster. And isn't that the reason why you would want to write your own instead of just rely on theirs? Oh, and we probably should have mentioned that this figure, the differs figure in change detection, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes, it runs. Actually, yeah, it's running the ng4f directive. It invokes the differ, which finds out the difference between two versions of the list that we're iterating over. It does this in one of the lifecycle hooks, which is being triggered by the change detection. And yeah, for our specific purposes, for our special data structures, we can write more efficient versions of these algorithms for finding out the difference.
So Minko, can you give? I'm not that personally. I'm not that smart. So I want like a definition for like in one sentence, just what is the problem that it solves and why is it good for me?
Yeah, so the differ is an abstraction. It's just an interface which has a diff method, which accepts given collection. Actually, it accepts two collections over time and compares them. So if we have the list which contains the numbers 1, 2, and we have the list which contains the numbers 2, 1, after we run this algorithm, we're going to get the number of differences, which in this case is only one difference, that these two numbers have changed their places.
It sounds like something that a service worker would use, like to know if there's a difference and if they need to update. Is that true or not really?
Internally, the change detection is using the differs in order to find out what the difference is in our bindings and to know what exactly it is supposed to update.
Does it work on deep level structure like trees and stuff like that, or
We
just
can-
like flat?
Yeah, you can implement one. Actually, the iterable differ, the only interesting thing, like the only thing that given data structure needs to, basically it just needs to be iterable. So if we are able to iterate over a given data structure, we can find the difference between like anything. So you can implement an iterator for a binary search tree, let's say, and you can just use the iterable differ of Angular in order to.
Out of the box, doesn't it? It does a deep compare, right? Out of the box.
It goes through. It just receives the items one by one and compares them based on. It performs reference check by default. So, but that's responsibility of the track by function. We can change that if we want to.
So it's not deep by default.
By default, well,
It's reference.
Yeah, it compares the items by reference.
Okay, so again, what is the problem that it solves for me as a day-to-day Angular developer?
It makes your ng4f works. It powers your ng4f directly.
Okay, so it's just the mechanism behind the scenes. So why would I want to write one on my own, let's say?
That's in extremely rare cases. It's almost certain that you would never need that. If in some specific cases you have super fancy data structure that you think you can implement a differ for, which runs faster than the default one, then you can consider creating one your own.
So can we back up a little, because I'm confused. So let's start with the standard behavior of an ng4. And if I have a list of 3 items in it, all right?
Yeah.
Let's call them employees. And so if I add a 4th employee, the default differ is going to know that already, correct? Out of the box.
Yeah, ng4f is going to trigger the differ, which is going to find out that you have added a new employee in the second list.
And if I still have 3, but I shuffle them, it's going to know that too, right?
Yeah, it's going to perform the same algorithm, and it's going to figure out that you have changed the places of some of the employees.
Right. Now, if one of those employees is Shai, and he changes his name again, as he always does.
To Mary.
He's going to Mary. He's changing his name to Mary. Does the differ detect that? I know that the binding refreshes, at least the display of the list item refreshes. Is the differ involved in that? Is the out of the box?
It's not going to. It depends. You can only display if you display the names of the employees in the list, then the differ doesn't have to do anything with that. By default, Angular is going to compare the individual employees by reference, so it doesn't know anything about their names.
Gotcha. So it's not going to, the NG4 isn't going to update, but the binding will, because the binding of his first name in the list item will refresh, because there's a separate change detection of any binding that I have on the screen, correct?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So given this out-of-the-box behavior, I'm getting to Shai's question here, it's kind of like, why should I think about this at all? I mean, it's just magic. It happens. Good things seem to happen. Why do I care?
I like magic.
Yeah. In practice, you don't have to care about this that much. So you can just use it. And the Angular team have did a great job in order to implement it in the most efficient manner possible in order to work with very generic data structures. If you, however, are building something very niche and you have your special data structure, which you think you can implement an efficient custom change detection algorithm for, you can then build your custom differ for it. For instance, in the blog post that I have built, I show how you can build a differ which is slightly faster than the built-in differ, which is already in Angular. But you need to use a special data structure for it. So you cannot use it with an array or with any mutable list or with a tree or whatever. You need to use the specific data structure that I've built in the blog post. So in such cases, when you need to squeeze the performance to maximum, in these cases, you may eventually need to build a custom differ.
What made you, first of all, thanks for the answer. What made you write the blog post?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, that was actually the first time when I joined this podcast adventures in Angular. I talked about, and based on the talk that I gave on NG Vegas, there I talked about how we can use AngularJS back then with immutable data structures. So previously in AngularJS, the way we were handling such situations like finding the differences in two states of given list, and after that rendering the difference with NG4, it was completely different from now. It didn't have such strong separation of concerns, and it was harder to plug some custom behavior which speeds up your application. But right now I noticed that you can plug a custom algorithm actually, which is being used by NG4 internally, and implement a faster change detection algorithm actually yourself. So I just decided to give it a try and see whether I can build something which is faster and in what cases it's going to be better to use it and how much faster it could be.
So you woke up one day and said, I'm going to hack on NG4. Out of nowhere, you put on your hat, which you always do, because I know you personally. You brush your teeth, and then you hacked on NG4 out of the blue.
Almost actually dreamt about that. And after that, I woke up.
Wow.
I'm never going to be that cool.
I was standing in the coffee shop and I was thinking, well, maybe I can implement a custom differ which behaves slightly faster in some cases. And it turned out it's possible. And that was part of my talk on Angular Connect last year.
I admire you.
So I'll tell you when you run into this damn thing. Forgive me for swearing. Whenever you pump a promiser in this is the only time most people run into, what is this different thing? When you pump a promise or an observable, you bind to it and you forgot the async, it erupts with some kind of error relating to differs that is completely incomprehensible to most people. Or maybe it's the other way around. When you had one and then you took the async out, I can't remember. Do you remember, Minko? And what should we do about that?
I'm not completely sure about the case you're talking about right now? Is it in a binding in ng4 specifically, or it's one of the?
Yeah, it's in an ng4. It's in an ng4. When you,
I see. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
You got your, you decided to go with taking the observable and putting it, binding directly to it.
Yes.
Or you decide to go the other way and you take the pipe to async out. I think you get an error in both those cases. Anyway.
Yeah. So here is what happens in this case. So you have your ng4 and you have bounds to given collection there, right? So you have your list that you have bound to. What happens is that once ng4 receives this binding, it finds, because you can have variety of differs for your data structures. You don't have to have only one. You have variety of differs. So what ng4 is going to do is that it is going to invoke the support method of the factory of each differ, and it is going to ask the factory, well, does this differ supports the data structure like that I just received a binding to? And if it is an array or a list, like immutable list or whatever, you're going to find by default the default differ. So you will be able to bind to this differ and render all of its items. However, if you if you have a binding to an observable or a promise, and you miss the async pipe, in such case, you're actually passing an observable or promise to your ng4f. And it is not able to figure out to find a differ for this data structure because it's a promise by default. It does not how to iterate over it and how to find the difference between two versions of it. So
So
nice.
that's how I first learned about differs. How about you guys?
It happened to me in the shower.
Happened to be on my first birthday.
Yeah, you dropped the soap and said that's a differ.
Yeah. So getting back to the technical stuff. So first of all, okay, so it's only for ng4 basically.
It's right? For ng4 and for a few more directives. As far as I remember, it works for ng4 uses such directive, ng class, and ng styles. But ng class, because you can pass the list of classes there, so it uses the iterable differ in order to find out whether you have altered this list somehow. For ng styles, it uses the key value differ. So you have these two interfaces, iterable differ and key value differ. So it's for lists and for like map-like data structures. And ng style uses the key value differ because there you can pass an object, which is basically some kind of a map.
I see. So, so a possible use case is to when you are writing one of those structural directives or just directives, okay, and you need like, I don't know, somehow to better manipulate the data structure you get, or not to manipulate, but to know the difference. Basically, that's where you might want to check out how does it work and how to implement it. But as you said, it might be like a rare case because the two default differs might just do.
Yeah, so if you need something like that, the best thing you can do is just to inject the iterable differs. It's because there is a provider available for this. You inject the iterable differs, you get the differ which works for your data structures that you want to find, like that you're going to use for like to bind to. And the default iterable differ is going to help you do the job. Basically, it's really well implemented. I looked at it like for a couple of hours, and it just does so many optimizations that it's pretty much hard to implement faster one, which is going to work on faster, like as generic as the default one and as fast as the one which already available. Also, you can use it in a coding interview. So if they ask you to like find the difference between two lists, you just say, well, I can here inject the iterable differ, and The rest.
Then the rest is it, and you're hired to Google.
Yeah, that's a good point. Why reinvent the wheel when they've already done it? If you bought into the whole immutability thing, then there's really nothing to do here either, right? Because it should the default one should be a champ with if you adhere to immutability of your lists.
Yes, there is interesting about the immutability, specifically because they differ internally. Well, the interesting part is how it compares the items by what property that they have. So we mentioned that it compares them by reference by default. So it's going to find out if we have a list of employees A, B, and C, it is going to compare them by reference and find out whether they have changed their places or not. However, you can plug a custom track by function. So that's basically what the track by function is used for. It accepts an item and it after that returns a value, which value will be used for comparing this item with other items. So by default, the track by function just takes an item and returns it.
So it would be bad in other words, if I decided to have to go with immutability, and let's say I got a brand new array of employees every time I fetch them, but they really weren't different.
Exactly. Yes.
I had better implement the track by function and say, hey, even though the object reference has changed, the ID hasn't, therefore assume that they are the same object.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So yeah, that's a very interesting actually misunderstanding of the track by function. A lot of people think that if they implement a track by function, that they are going to have faster applications. But in fact, there is no way to make them faster because already the track by function is just pretty fast. It just returns the object that you passed to it.
Who are those people who try to implement the track by function?
Oh, come on, Shai.
I don't know them in person.
You don't know them in person.
Who doesn't implement the track by function?
No, because you say there are people who...
Pirates?
Pirates, yeah, pirates implement the track by... Who does that? Unless you're crazy genius like Minko, who wears a hat.
Do you mean like who created it? Who wrote it?
No. Who writes that? Because we're talking about like people who try and write the track by... Never mind. Re-implement it.
Oh, you mean re-implement it? Because you should provide the logic for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually it accepts an index and an item, and what you're supposed to do is just return, let's say, item.id. So that's the logic for the track by function in case you want to compare the items by their ID. But looking at the repo, it looks like Mishko has developed it originally, Mishko, or that's Victor.
You mean, okay, Mishko, your brother, Mishko Gechev.
I thought we agreed it was Fishko.
Fishko. We just to get John Papa, who joined us on the joke, we concluded that Minko is Minko Gechev, just so you know. So that's why, yeah.
Yeah, you wanted to make this joke for the past 2 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I will keep saying it over and over again. But yeah, okay.
Don't wait for users to report problems. Raygun gives you complete visibility on errors, crashes, and performance problems affecting your end users. You can replicate issues in seconds rather than digging through log files and having to rely on users to report errors or crashes. Raygun gives you a window into how users are really experiencing your software applications. It has full support for JavaScript and all other major languages and platforms. It takes less than 10 minutes to set up, and you can get a free 14-day trial by going to raygun.com and signing up today.
So Shai, you've never implemented the track by function yourself?
So first of all, I think it's amazing. Like, I'm on a quest to learn. Like, I'm reading the source code of the compiler now, and just to better understand stuff. So I find this stuff like every time I have a chance to talk with Minko about stuff like those, because Minko, you like you implemented, like last episode, you talked about the linter, the codelizer, right? The tool you wrote.
Yes.
So you're heavy on compilers. Have you read the Angular compiler?
Yeah, I even have a favorite file, so we can discuss it after that.
Oh.
Yeah, the metadata collector is pretty good.
So we need to have an episode on that, I think, which will be quite interesting.
It's pretty interesting. Yeah, the story of when there was only just-in-time compilation, I was working on Colorizer, and at some point, I had to do some like pretty serious stuff in order to collect the metadata for the application in order to perform like proper static code analysis. And it turns out that Chuck, who has tens of years of experience in compilers, has already built this. So that was awesome, and his code is really great. So I'll definitely encourage you to take a look at it.
Nice. Chuck, did we have Chuck on the show?
Now I'm confused. No, we haven't.
It's a recursive, but yeah,
it's Chuck.
Great. So I don't have any more questions, I think.
I just want to recap really quickly. So differs are the way that we detect changes typically in collections or NG4. And this is typically something that you're not going to need to change. But if you have some kind of custom data structure and you think you can implement this to get some kind of performance improvement out of it, then you may want to consider it.
Yeah, so you have these two options. You can either build your custom differ, and you can invoke iterable differs or key value differs.extend and pass your custom differ, and you're going to get your differ. Like you can just configure the provider this way for the iterable differ. So that's the first option, extending the set of differs which already exists. And the second option is to reuse them for your specific structural directive.
Mm. I think the other
find difference between.
I think the other takeaway from this show is that if you were like using, as we tripped over it along the way, if you go into the whole immutable thing, then you're definitely going to want to provide a track by function, because you'll be the object reference, which is the typical thing that's used to differentiate, to detect whether an object has truly changed or not, won't do you any good. You got to provide, and it's a really simple function that you provide for the track by that says, hey, this thing, this is what you should really be looking at differ to see whether this is a new object or not, or a new array or not. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. I think that's even like maybe the most important thing that people should get from this episode, because that's something you're going to need on day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I'm gonna check this out after this episode.
All right. Well, is there anything else we should dig into or dive into with this? Or is that more or less the story with differs?
Yeah, the other things are mostly implementation details. So yeah, if you're interested in further reading, because it's hard to explain it without having any diagrams, or to explain the relations between the individual abstractions, it's hard to do that. Over the podcast, you can take a look at the blog post that we're going to share.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you have any tips for building or testing the differs?
Tips for testing differs?
Yeah, or building them. I mean, you kind of walk through it in the blog post, but are there any gotchas that people are going to run through once they kind of go off of the path that you've given us in the blog post?
There is a very complete test suite for the default differs in the Angular code base. So if you're building a custom differ, you can just take a look at the test cases there and make sure that your custom differ passes them.
Okay.
Do you have any tips for being awesome?
That's something that is in the specialty of Shai.
No. Like I said before, I admire you, Minko. I'm not kidding. I'm not joking. I really, really am. I think you like the stuff that you do for the community, like with your blog posts over the past few years with your research and making this stuff available for the rest of us is amazing, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. This is one of those things that I, as a mere mortal, would never have gotten into on my own. But
Me too.
It's so interesting to see how all of this hangs together, and where, you get a little bit off the beaten path. It's, this is going to pay off to know.
Yeah, it's one of those mapping thing when you try to map all the knowledge around Angular, which is enormous. Is one of those things that now you have maybe your key in your mind map, where you will get into maybe performance issues with NG4 or track by stuff. Then you will know to get to Minko's blog post and to read it and to get into that. That's what I'm taking personally from it.
And in the entire Angular code base, it contains an entire computer science degree in there. So if you go through the entire code base and you make sure that you understand everything at a given point, because it's not easy, of course, there are so many abstractions and so much stuff going on there. But it contains everything from compiler design to design patterns and variety of algorithms. So it's really, really worth it to spend some time there.
Wow, that's a cool course to have. Going over the source code and analyzing it by the design patterns or compiler theory and all that stuff. But I'm saving that one for you, Minko.
Yeah, I did this for angular.js. There is Angular in patterns that I wrote. And in Angular 2, the design patterns, you can see they look even more pristine. They're even, the design of Angular is pretty good.
Yep.
We have a few extra minutes. I'm wondering if briefly you can give people, if they're thinking, it might be fun to dig in and start reading the Angular source. Is there a good place that you recommend people start?
Right now. So
start with A, and then go B, C.
Start from the beginning.
Start from the beginning, and when you get to the end, circle back.
When you said ABC, I was thinking, so start with Angular, right after that go to Bezo, and finish with Quasar.
Good luck. Good freaking luck.
Oh man,
A
you took
is
that
for
somewhere.
Angular, B is for Bazel, B is for
So Minko, I want to get your opinion on this, because I spend more time in the Angular source than I care to admit, it's great code. But I think that, for me, I run right to the tests. Do you do that?
Yes, tests are extremely helpful to understand what's actually going on. You can see directly how given abstraction is being used, and right after that, reverse engineer it from there.
Yeah, because I don't even know what the purpose is usually until I go to the test, and then I say, "Oh, that's why you put that there."
Yeah.
And there's a lot of mystery parameters or mystery and things, and you say, "What is that for?"
Yeah. Yeah. Previously, it was also great to start with the reflective injector, because it was super easy to read, and it's like a separate module which you can easily explore yourself. And it wasn't that complicated actually, but now the Angular team is dropping
it's dead. Yeah. So that's a goner for the first entry point. But dude, Ward and Minko, the tip on the tests, I don't know why I didn't think about it. Being such a, testy guy, I never thought about starting from the test, oddly enough. And I've been wasting my time trying to figure out the source code without the test. This is a brilliant tip. Thanks.
A lot of people start actually doing that for code reviews as well. I read this article about test-driven code reviews, which explains exactly that.
Well, and frankly, that's why I invest so in my own stuff. I invest heavily in my test because I in the naming of them and organizing of them I think of it as documentation for the API. I can write all the words I want on the API documentation page, but nothing says it like code and code that you can run. So, and I to a certain degree, other people share that philosophy. And to some degree, the Angular team does that. I wish the tests were a little more clear about their intentions, but nonetheless, I've always thought of tests that as being one of the key reasons to write a test in the first place. Now, obviously we all know about regressions and stuff like that, but it's the way I understand what the API is really reaching for, and also how the author of it thought about the strange edge cases, which are, you really can't talk about edge cases in the API text, but you sure can show them in the test.
Yeah. This is what I do for my own code, but for some reason I never thought about doing it for like a framework or a library or something like that. I usually do it for like small libraries, like just one file libraries, and I look at the test, but didn't think about doing that for Angular. Maybe because it's not sitting near, the files are not sitting together. I think they're in a separate folder or something like that.
Well, isn't that a sterling observation? I mean, this is another reason why the rest of us and why the style guide says put your tests right next to the thing they test. Whereas one of the things I don't like in Angular is that they have all their tests off in some other test directory, so you have to work to find them.
Yeah, I agree.
Good point. All right, one last thing. You mentioned you work for Rime, and I know we're going to talk about Rime in a future episode. But do you want to just give the 2-minute elevator pitch for that?
Chuck, he can't. They will fire him.
Sure. So we're building a platform. Well, it sounds very abstract, 2-minute pitches. But we're building a platform which, by using virtualization in the browser, we're trying to help you to build more scalable and consistent workshops and corporate trainings. So instead of going around on your workshop and making sure that everyone has installed a specific version of TypeScript and Angular CLI and like Node.js and NPM on their machine, you can just set up this in the cloud. Right after that, schedule a session. We're going to create a number of instances of this specific virtual machine that you set up, and everyone can use it in the browser. So you can just use this and build scalable trainings, because you can start the session and anyone anywhere around the world can join your session and see what exactly you're doing and teaching. And if anyone gets stuck, you can help them out. So that's the basic idea.
Do you use a lot of Docker containers?
They're only, for Linux virtual machines. For Windows, we're now using VMs. For Linux.
VM? Cool.
All right. Well, we'll have you back on and we'll talk about that. Let's go ahead and do some picks. Are you ready to master Angular? Oasis Digital offers Angular Bootcamp, a 3-day intense workshop class for individuals or teams. They cover Angular 4 and 2 and focus on the skills and knowledge you need for complex, data-rich applications. They also still offer AngularJS for teams supporting older projects. Bring them to your site or send developers to them in St. Louis, San Francisco, New York, DC, and other cities, and online at angularbootcamp.com. Joe, do you want to start us with picks?
Oh, sure. I could start us off with picks. I want to pick an audiobook that I just barely bought. I think this has been picked on this episode. I don't know if it's been picked on this episode before or not, or at least on one of the shows. Sorry, not this episode, this show, or one of the shows. It's been picked on one of the shows before. It's called Do the Work. And it's just about like getting started and, having a project, just making it run. Okay. So it's a pretty interesting book. I think it's done by the same guy who writes The War of Art.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a good book. It was actually recommended on, to me. That was where I heard it. Somebody else recommended it. And so I started reading it. The other thing I want to recommend or pick is an art book that I got called The Art of Overwatch. My wife got it for my birthday. If you're a fan of Overwatch.
Oh, for the game, right?
Yeah, the video game,
nice.
Overwatch. It's got a bunch of really cool different drawings, really concept art and stuff like that. It was really awesome. So the art of Overwatch, and those are my picks.
Cool.
So Joe, there's this new movie coming out about, speaking of games, about some kind of game that, and some famous director is behind it all. I've just started to see it. Is this another one of those movies I should avoid?
Wait, are you talking about Ready Player One?
Yeah, I was going to say 1, 2, 3. I don't know what these games are.
What?
Who directed that?
Well, Spielberg
Oh, Spielberg.
is either a director. Spielberg.
Spielberg.
That's his alter ego.
Well, in that case, the resistance is futile.
Spielberg.
Directed it or produced it. Anyway, I'm starting to see ads for it, and it looks just the kind of movie you guys would love and that I would hate. And I just wondered.
So, just so that you know, that movie essentially is the theme of anti-comp this year.
Holy smokes!
I was pretty sure we told you that before, Ward. And I was like,
Oh,
dude,
goodness,
that's like the theme.
Well, oh God, I'll be ready.
So you're not coming in NGConf to the premiere?
No, hey, even if they had a Star Wars theme, I would show up in order
to mock it.
To mock it.
So Ready Player One isn't about a video game. It's about a dystopian future. There's a virtual reality that plays a part in it. But
don't tell me. I didn't read the book.
Oh, well, go read the book. It's going to be way better than the movie.
Okay, so don't ruin it for me. Like my friend ruined the Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's umami. It's the Sixth Sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to spoiling movies, my answer to every movie is everyone dies at the end.
Everyone dies. And then
somebody asked me about that, and then went and saw Rogue One, and then they were mad at me, and I'm like, I say that about every movie.
Chuck, you just ruin it for the rest of the world.
Joe spoiled my spoil. Anyway, picks.
If you haven't seen it yet, I mean, you deserve it. You deserve to be spoiled at this point. Like, get your life together. Like,
after
what are you
6
doing?
months, it's fair game.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, Ward, what are your picks?
Well, I mentioned the from the ridiculous to the sublime. I mentioned the recent translation of the Odyssey by Homer, translation by Emily Wilson, and I was talking about how excited I was to have received it, and I have now read it. Couldn't put it down. It makes it just flies. And when I was done, I said, yeah, after you've read this, why would you ever read any of those sci-fi things again? It's just like going to Dr. Seuss after reading something. So I highly, highly recommend Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey. It's an adventure story. And if you want to claim that you have any awareness of Western civilization, it's a must-read.
Nice. Shai, what are your picks?
Okay, so I got two. One is a book I've been wanting to learn for quite some to read for quite some time about TDD, test-driven development, which is one of the more famous books, which called Growing Object-Oriented Software Guided by Tests. And it's been on my wish list for a long time. So I just bought it and started reading it, and so far so good. So I recommend, even if it's like an older book, it's really important to know the history and to know where it all came from and the best practices which still hold true till today. All for preparation for a course I'm doing on Angular testing now. And the second pick I have is a...
Are you a TDD guy? Are you a TDD guy? You are?
I'm a TDD.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm going to piggyback on that one real quick and just let you know that we interviewed Steve Freeman and Nat Price on Ruby Rogues about 5 or 6 years ago. So
Nice.
if you want to hear their take on the book and some of the stuff surrounding that, then you can definitely check that out.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that out. Nice, thanks. And yeah, we can talk about on a different episode word about EDD because I sense that you have criticisms, a criticism about that. No?
What you sense is that I'm intrigued, but I've never been able to bring myself to do it.
I have a simple process. I have a simple process to get you on board, and just 3 simple steps. And yeah, I will give you the guide.
Take me to school, dude. But I'm a skeptic, but I'm open.
Okay.
I think we just heard a future episode get figured out.
Yeah. I can talk about it for a long time about EDD and how it changed.
Do we have anything next week? Because that'd be fun.
Actually,
oh wait, are we? You're doing something special for NG Atlanta, aren't you?
I am. We also have a guest scheduled next week.
So we'll schedule it to sometime.
But in 2 weeks, we have an opening, so we'll see about getting it then.
Okay, cool. So getting back to my next pick, so I saw this really cool video today by Vice, the channel Vice. It's a YouTube channel, also a website, but I will link to the YouTube video, and it's called "How to Become TripAdvisor's #1 Fake Restaurant," which is trending.
Oh my gosh, that sounds awesome.
Nice.
This is one of I was amazed. This really, really cool video by some British dude who just faked his way to #1. What? Wait, Ward.
My fault. I should have muted.
That's okay. That's okay. I will start again. So no, I was saying that just like one British guy who faked his way to become #1, but he documented the whole process, and the editing is very, very good, and the whole it's 18 minutes, but really, really fun and goes by very quickly. So I really recommend everyone seeing that because it blew my mind. So yeah, I will link to that. Those are my picks.
Awesome. Alyssa, what are your picks?
So just have 2. Whenever I want to detox at the end of the day, I've been getting into 2 different video games. One is called Ark. It's kind of like Minecraft with dinosaurs. So much fun. Still in beta, so yes, bugs, but it's a blast. And then the other one is Fortnite, which me and my friends love getting online. And you drop with 100 people onto a map, and you all race to get guns, and it's basically last man standing. So it's a lot of fun. So yeah, if you need some detox time with video games, those are the 2 I've been playing lately. So yeah.
So that's musical chairs with blood?
I guess so. If
Nice.
the chairs are like the guns, because you're running around grabbing guns, and you kill someone, you get their guns. So yeah, that sounds kind of like musical chairs, I guess.
God. The society we live in. Can't we run around and kiss people or something until you run out of people to kiss?
Yeah, and once you've been kissed, you're out of the game. That makes no sense, Ward. See, this plot line is already busted.
All right. I'm going to jump in with a few picks. First of all, my wife and I got a new bed from Tuft & Needle, and we're kind of liking it. I don't know if I love it or not, but it's much better than the bed we had before. And my wife has some chronic back problems. I trashed them pretty harshly on Ruby Rogues, and then somebody said, "Oh, did you try this?" So I do have one last ditch thing that I'm going to try with them, but they offered a 20-year warranty, and they haven't honored it so far. So if you're out there looking for a bed and you're thinking that you want to, drop some cash on one that is supposed to be really nice, it was really nice for about 8 years, and now it kills us to sleep on because one of the layers is essentially collapsed. It's an IntelliBed, and they have the gel matrix on the top. So you can buy one, but just keep in mind that it's a major hassle to get them to honor the warranty. So I'm just letting people know because I'm pretty sure I've picked them on the show before, and I if I sort of endorse a product and then it turns out not to work out, I want to make sure people know, that there's some gotchas with it. So, and then one last pick. I've really been enjoying having the Apple AirPods to go with my iPhone, so I'm going to pick those as well.
Oh my goodness, I'm going to double that. Love them.
I love them.
As long as you can wear like the normal headphones. My husband can't wear those; they don't fit into his ear, and so therefore he can't wear the AirPods. But if those work for you, then you would absolutely love the AirPods as well. So yeah.
Yeah. I've had a few people say that they don't fit in their ears, but everybody else that has them loves them. So +1 there. But those are my picks. Minko, do you have some picks for us?
Yeah, sure. So the third edition of my book went out a couple of weeks ago. My second, so that's my first pick. My second pick is that there are going to be like conditional types in TypeScript. So the pull request was, I think it's already merged in master. And my third pick is StackBlitz, this awesome cloud IDE. It's really cool. It's really, really cool. We had the StackBlitz team as guests on Angular San Francisco last week, actually this week. And they did amazing job. It's really nice.
We had them on our show as well, right?
Yeah.
It was like a couple weeks back.
How does it compare, Minko, to what Rime is doing?
They get so first everything they run is entirely in the browser, so you cannot run a virtual machine. That's all you can do. For instance, in Rime you can teach Photoshop or Excel or anything.
Nice.
That's the difference. For lightweight use cases, StackBlitz is pretty cool.
It's not just for code.
Yeah.
Nice. Wow. Yeah, StackBlitz, I second that. What they created, what they hacked away together out of all of these technologies is amazing.
Yeah.
And the PR was just merged, so StackBlitz, the Angular docs are up.
Nice.
The
Oh
StackBlitz.
my gosh, that's
Congrats.
Yeah. John had to bail, but I'm going to tell you about his pick, which is a series that his team is doing called 5 Things About. And it's a bunch of fun videos that give you 5 interesting observations about a particular technology. And he did one with React Dan Abramov, Redux. Well, he's also
Redux,
React.
Yeah.
And he did one with me, and so we'll have it in the show notes, and you can see what kind of fun we have there. And also, one hopes there is some actual meat in there mixed with the fun. It's kind of a meat fun sandwich.
Do you live together, you and John Papa? Or
all right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap
Can't
this up.
touch that.
Dun, 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 dun. Okay.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Minko. We will catch you all in a week with more Angular stuff.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Minko. We love you.
Nice.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.